The 1982 Tour de France was the 69th Tour de France, taking place July 2 to July 25, 1982. The total race distance was 22 stages over 21.79 miles, with riders averaging 23.649 mile per hour. It was won by Bernard Hinault, his fourth victory so far. Changes from the 1981 Tour. In the 1981 Tour de France, Urs Freuler, Eddie Planck-Cannet and Walter Planck-Cannet had left the race before the Alps. The Tour organizers did not want this to happen again, so in 1982, cyclists were not allowed to leave the Tour without a good reason. A cyclist that left the Tour unauthorized would lose all the prize money that he won so far, receive a fine, and would not be allowed to join the next year. Participants. In response to the finish of the 1981 Tour de France, French Minister of Sports Edouard Javis objected to the amount of advertising in the race, and suggested the Tour to return to the national team format. The Tour organization needed the money brought in by the sponsors, and no changes were made to the team structure. The Tour organization decided to start with 17 teams, each with 10 cyclists, for a total of 170, a new record. Tour director FAR Copyright Lixla Copyright Viton suggested to reduce the number of cyclists by starting with teams of 9 cyclists, but this was rejected. Teams could submit a request to join until May 15, 1982. To promote cycling in the United States of America, the American national cycling team would automatically be accepted, but the American team made no request. The following 17 teams each sent 10 cyclists, for a total of 170, Hinault, who had won the Tour in 1978, 1979 and 1981, and left the 1980 Tour in leading position, was the clear favorite for the victory. In those other years, Hinault had won several races before the Tour, but in 1982 he had only won one major race, the 1982 Giro d'Italia. Hinault tried to be the fourth cyclist, after Fausto Coppi, Jacques Anquetil and Eddie Merscx, to win the Giro Tour double. Notable absent was Lucien Van Impe, who was second in the 1981 Tour de France, winning the mountains classification. Since the 1969 Tour de France, Van Impe had started each edition, winning the general classification in the 1976 Tour and the mountains classification 5 times. Van Impe wanted to join, but his team Toro was not invited, as the organization considered it not strong enough to ride both the Giro and the Tour. Van Impe tried to find a team to hire him only for the 1982 Tour, but was not successful. Race details: after Bernard Hinault, the winner of the previous Tour and main favorite, won the prologue, 7 seconds ahead of Gerry Interman, Belgian Ludo Peters took the lead in the first stage, by finishing 38 seconds ahead of the peloton. On the second stage however, Phil Anderson took the lead. Anderson had worn the yellow jersey in the previous year also, the first time in history that the yellow jersey was in non-European hands, but this year he would keep it longer. In the fifth stage, a team time trial was scheduled. Employees of the Usener steel factory in Da Nang were blocking the road, and the race had to be cancelled, whilst some teams were already racing. The Tour organizers quickly decided to replace it by an extra stage, in the morning before stage 9. In the 8th stage, Ra copyright Gis Clary had escaped, and created a margin of almost 13 minutes. The stage ended on a circuit of 6 km, where 15 laps were planned. Clary was unable to lap the rest of the field because of a flat tire, and was caught by the rest. Phil Anderson remained the leader until the individual time trial in stage 11. Then, as expected, Bernard Hinault took the lead, even though Gerry Interman beat him in the time trial. Then the race got to the Pyrenee copyrighters. Hinault kept his rivals in sight, and allowed other cyclists to escape. Then, in stage 14, Hinault won the time trial, and had created a margin of more than 5 minutes. In the Alps, Hinault used the same tactics, and lost no time to his rivals. In stage 16, protesting farmers delayed the start of the race, but this time the race could continue, after the farmers allowed the riders to start. Then, in the time trial in stage 19, Hinault won again. Hinault was accused of riding a boring race. He responded by winning the final stage in Paris. Stages: the 1982 Tour de France started on July 2, and had 2 rest days, in Lille and Martigues. Results: there were several classifications in the 1982 Tour de France, 4 of them awarding jerseys to their leaders. The most important was the general classification, calculated by adding each cyclist's finishing times on each stage. The cyclist with the least accumulated time was the race leader, identified by the yellow jersey. The winner of this classification is considered the winner of the Tour. Additionally, there was a points classification, where cyclists got points for finishing among the best in a stage finish, or in intermediate sprints. The cyclist with the most points lead the classification, and was identified with a green jersey. There was also a mountains classification. The organization had categorized some climbs as either or kata copyright guri, first, second, third, or fourth category. Points for this classification were won by the first cyclists that reached the top of these climbs first, with more points available for the higher categorized climbs. The cyclist with the most points lead the classification, and was identified with a polka dot jersey. Another classification was the young rider classification. This was decided the same way as the general classification, but only cyclists under 24 were eligible, and the leader wore a white jersey. The 5th individual classification was the intermediate sprints classification. This classification had similar rules as the points classification, but only points were awarded on intermediate sprints. In 1982, this classification had no associated jersey. For the team classification, the times of the best 3 cyclists per team on each stage were added. The leading team was the team with the lowest total time. The riders in the team that lead this classification wore yellow caps. General classification, aftermath: Hinault's victory in 1982 is considered as the most effortless Tour victory in his career. During the 1982 Tour de France, the Tour organization was impressed by the global audience that the 1982 FIFA World Cup reached, and they made plans to develop the Tour into a World Cup format, run every 4 years, where teams from all over the earth would compete against each other. The main part of the race would be in France, but more other countries would be visited. It was discussed to start the Tour in New York. The 1983 Tour de France was still run in the familiar format in France, but it was open to amateur teams, although only one Colombian accepted the invitation. References